Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second ever, I should say, not annual, storytelling event. Thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. We're sponsored tonight. I feel like a DJ. Can I just tell you that? I feel like a DJ. We're sponsored tonight by the Savannah Wellness Group and the CIDIA Group. So thanks to them for being willing to be our sponsors tonight and encourage and arm twist and beg all of you to be here. And I really want to give a round of applause right away for our storytellers who were brave enough to volunteer for this. For some of you, you've already seen the lineup if you tuned in early, but I'm going to put the lineup in the chat, and I've also sent it out by email. So for all my storytellers, you've gone public whether you intended to or not. And so we'll see how things go. Okay, so we're going to start out with Dr. Tracy Vemilipali, who's going to get us started tonight. Go, Dr. V.
All right. So as many of you know, I come as half of a match set. And so I was lucky enough in my third year to marry the love of my life, third year of vet school, to meet and marry the love of my life. But I really desperately wanted to get to see, where he grew up, but we were two poor graduate students. So it actually took us a while we could, go to grad school, finish up grad school and eat, but that was about it for a while. So we actually took us about 3 years after being married, almost 3 years, before I could finally get my inaugural trip to India. Now, I'd talked to my in-laws, and when I'm talking poor grad students, we could not afford to go there. We could not afford to bring anybody here. And so I had talked to my in-laws on the phone. We even did something maybe none of you have heard of, pre-email. We wrote each other letters so that nobody does anymore. But there was also another thing in that now, all of my extended in-laws speak English, except to a certain extent, my father-in-law can really understand it. He can speak some of it. He's just a little rusty on it. And then my mother-in-law, not so much. And so we did a lot through interpreters, but so I was definitely excited. And we were going, by the way, we were going for a month. So I was really excited, but what if I get there and they don't like what they see? So when I say the word India, you may have some pictures that arrive in your mind. If those of you that are lucky and have gotten to travel with India, you have more of an immersion experience. Others, like me, it's only what you see on the media. Well, that can go both ways. So what has the folks in India seen about America? Do they like us? Or, because we don't always get the best rap around town. So I was a little trepidatious, but I was like, okay, I'm so excited because I'm going to see where my husband grew up. And we arrive, it's December. We arrive in India after about 24 hours of travel, lots of layovers, and we get there and everybody is in the airport. And this was back, of course, before 9/11. So you actually could come into the airport and meet folks right there at the gate. So they're meeting me, I'm meeting them. I'm a total hugger. I'm like, I hope you're okay with this because I'm an American, we hug, and I come from a huggy family, so get ready. And so I am getting along great. We arrive, but our luggage doesn't. And it's going to be a week before we get luggage. So that's one tiny little stressor. Although back in the day, do not expect this to happen, guys, if this happens to you. I think we were lucky. Back in the day, they would give you a voucher. So now you have British Airways, thank you. You have given us money, and I'm in India, the land of textiles. Oh, please, I'm so ready to go shopping. So we are meeting everybody, but then it's time to gather the luggage that we have, our carry-ons, and go to the apartment. Now, if you have gone to India and if you've gone to northern India, you have seen a different side of India. There, the lines of traffic roughly equate language-wise to the lines of traffic in the United States. In the South, where my husband is from, the city of Hyderabad, traffic lines are suggestions. And so what ends up happening is they're watching me watch hydro body traffic, praying we don't all die because people are going in and out. If there's 3 lanes of traffic, there are at least 7 cars across. And we don't die. We end up going shopping. I get a couple of really lovely Punjabi dresses. So, okay, we're settling in. Things are looking good. Day 1, day 2, day 3. Day 3. Interesting thing that's happening, checking in with myself. Doesn't air unsteadiness or air queasiness go away after you hit the ground? I'm feeling just a bit off, and I think I might know why. So, but here I am, I'm with my new family, my in-laws that I'm meeting for the first time. So I'm like, yo, babe, come here. Can you talk to your sister? So he's got a brother and a sister, both older. And I said, can you talk to your sister? I think I might need to get acquainted with your healthcare system. But can you keep it on the down low? Let's not start any rumors. Let's just take this one step at a time. He and I, talk. I get to it with his sister. About half hour to an hour later, the send-off party of the entire family is waving goodbye. Now, I'm not just misremembering this because there's video proof of this. Who's taking the video from on top of the apartment complex? Dr. Heavey. So I'm with my sister-in-law, who I just met face-to-face 3 days back, in a new lovely Punjabi dress, on a scooty, which is like a Vespa, about to brave hydro body traffic again, going to a clinic, thinking that I know why I might still feel a little airsick. So we go together. She gets me through the front door, helps me. We get into the clinic. Of course, they take you. What do they want to do? They want to do some labs. So we go straight back to the lab. Now, my first conundrum hits me. There's me. There's a particular sample jar. And I have yards and yards of lovely fabric and an Indian style toilet in front of me. So now it becomes, where am I gonna put stuff? And so I navigate that. I figure that out successfully, and I give back the sample to the lab tech. She then takes sample and cassette A, proceeds to put a little of the sample on the dipstick, and I'm not kidding you, 1 second goes, oh, I'm sorry, you're not pregnant. And I'm like, okay, I may not be a real doctor, but I know it takes longer than a second for that sucker to, do what it needs to do. And then she goes, oh, ha, just kidding. So universal truth number 1 is that really bad lab humor equates to really bad dad humor, and that goes across cultures right there. So she laughs and she says, oh no, I'm just kidding. I was like, oh, okay, all right, great. And then she takes the dipstick and puts it in an envelope and seals it. So now I feel like I'm in the Oscars, and we've got the Oscar envelope that only can be unveiled, but at the stage. So then they take me back to so then it's me, the envelope, the golden envelope, and my sister-in-law, and we all go into the doctor's office. Okay. And I sit down, and the doctor says, oh, hello, Mrs. Vemalapalli. How are you? Oh, it's your first time here. Yeah. I'm having this conversation, but in the corner of my eye, there are 2 women seated on the exam table. Now everything's fine. They're fully clothed and, nothing, but it's what I'll call an obviously pregnant young lady that's about my age, and someone who I assume is an older female relative, probably her mom. And I'm thinking, well, they're just waiting for maybe a script or something, and then they're going to go. And I'm still having this conversation with the doctor. But they look really, really comfortable there. Like they're not moving. So this is where life goes into complete slow motion because one eye on them, and I'm also kind of like I'm trying to be the lovely American, not the ugly American. So I'm like, oh hi, how are you? And and I'm doing that back and forth, and then in slow mo, the doctor starts to rip open the envelope, pull out the dipstick, and it's like, congratulations, Mrs. Vemalapalli, you're pregnant. And then life speeds up really fast. Suddenly, my sister in law is hugging me and congratulating me. The doctor is congratulating me. Two people I've never met. I'm introducing myself to them and saying, hey, namaste, nice to meet you, and thanks for the congrats. And then that's it. And somehow I'm on the sidewalk. I'm back on the sidewalk. So this is how I found out that I was pregnant with our oldest daughter. Now the good news is I was really concerned about, wow, like, how am I going to fit in? Like, are people, my real estate, my place in the family went up. So I was in like Flint. Now my father-in-law and my mother-in-law, particularly my father-in-law, is introducing me to like left, right, and center on the street. Like, this is my daughter-in-law, and she's having our grandchild. And so I'm like, hi, how you doing? Yes, I am having a kid. That was kind of cool. That was really wonderful. The one thing that they kept saying though was, because at this point they had 3 grandsons. They had no granddaughters at this point. They had 3 grandsons. So you take care of our granddaughter. You take care of our granddaughter. So I turned to Dr. Evie and I said, you have explained how this works, right? I am giving an X chromosome either way. So if they do not like the outcome, they need to come to you, not to me. Well, we did have a daughter. And not only that, we have 2 daughters, and now there are 3 granddaughters and grandsons. So we hit the jackpot there. And it's been wonderful ever since, but it was a little bit, wow, I'm not quite sure where I am in this situation. I did return the favor when they came to the US for the first time. So about 10 years later, they were able to make it to the US for the first time. And that's when my gallbladder decided to go. And so I was like, hey, I've seen your healthcare system. You want to see ours? That's how I found out I was pregnant with our oldest daughter. And the only final thing I want to say is, I've hit the jackpot with my in-laws. They are the most wonderful people, and we have worked out, even though I'm terrible with Telugu, to the point of non-existent. We have a language all our own. We have lots of interpreters around us, but we have developed a language all of our our own, just on nonverbal language and through our interpreters. And that has never stopped us from being able to love one another. And so that's my story of how I found out I was expecting 3 days after getting to India.
That is fantastic. Thank you, Dr. V. That was fantastic. And I kind of wish there was video of that, because I think that would make a fantastic movie. Like that would just be really an amazing thing for everyone to witness.
Probably the look on my face would have been priceless, because I'm just kind of not like, hi, how are you? Ooh.
Yeah, Alyssa says in the chat that she wants to see the send-off video. I think you should bring that to class someday.
It exists.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. So our next storyteller tonight, as you guys can see, is going to be Hope Miriam. And Hope is a BIM student, and she has a story from a different perspective to share with us. Hope, do you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Cornell. Indeed, I am a BIM student. I'm in my undergrad here at A&M, and it's so great to get to meet y'all and speak to y'all. And she's right. I'm going to be taking a completely different approach and telling y'all about this time my pet turtle ran away from me and came back 8 days later. So to start off, my turtle's name is Georgia Peach, and she, along with all of my other pets, is very spoiled. She's very accustomed to getting daily time to walk outside and a lot of treats all the time. We actually saved her from being killed by a lawn care service from my grandma's backyard in Georgia. So that is where she gets her name from. And we found her about 5 minutes before the lawn care guys were gonna do the backyard. So she was lucky from the start. She came all the way to Texas, and like I said, very spoiled, loving home. The only thing that she was pretty annoyed with were my pet dogs. I have 3 pet dogs. They're very rambunctious, very crazy. Whenever she's outside walking around doing her thing, they love to go sniff her and just kind of annoy her. So that's really the only downside of her life. I think she has a pretty good life. But something that I think is really cute is she is friends with a wild rabbit. I don't know if the rabbits in Dallas are as friendly as the ones in College Station, but whenever I would put her outside to kind of run around, there would always be a rabbit that would somehow find its way into our backyard and just kind of hang out with her. So super cute. But there was this one day where, me being the crazy busy person I am, I put her outside to do her thing and completely forgot she was there. Terrible pet owner moment. But I completely forgot I put her out there. I was doing chores around the house, and then I actually had to go to my practice for my horseback riding team. So about 2 hours later, my dad calls me and says, "Hey, where's the turtle? She's not in her tank." And I just remember feeling the blood drain from my face and my heart stop. And I was like, oh my goodness, Georgia Peach has been outside for the entire afternoon. I don't know where she is. So basically, Georgia Peach just decided to go on an adventure. She decided to explore the neighborhood, which for her was quite a strange land, given that she hadn't really set foot outside of our small Dallas backyard. So Georgia Peach ended up going all around the neighborhood. We suspect she checked out all the different backyards and maybe even found a pond to hang out in for a little bit. Um, but basically, I think it was the dogs that drew her to escape. I think she just couldn't handle having to live with 3 dogs anymore, and so she wanted out. So indeed, she just went right under the fence, and we searched for days. We searched day in, day out, could not find her, dug under bushes. I even went around and hung up lost turtle posters around my neighborhood, y'all. It was so bad. I just felt so guilty that I had lost her because I loved her so much, and I was just wanting her to have some exercise and be like a regular turtle. And of course, I was the one who happened to lose her. So I was very sad for about a week. I was starting to give up hope. I I was not having any luck with my lost turtle posters. And so after about a week, I just kind of came to terms with the situation and realized that, she's probably in a better place living her best life as a wild turtle now. Um, so I kind of came to terms with it. I was sad, but I accepted that mistakes happen and I was never going to do it again. Um, so I lost her on a Monday, and that the next Tuesday, so 8 days later, I was letting my dogs out to go outside and I saw a rabbit. There was a rabbit in the yard just kind of hanging out, and I thought I saw something moving like next to the rabbit. And I was like, you know what, probably just dog poop, not that big of a deal. But I kept staring at it and I was like, no, it can't be. And so, sure enough, I walk out there, the rabbit scurries away, and there's Georgia Peach just hanging out in the middle of the yard. So, what we think happened was that she was, exploring the strange land, couldn't really find any food, any water. She realized that she liked having everything handed to her, being a pet turtle. She likes that air conditioning and the nice soft dirt. So she decided that, she would put up with the dogs a little bit longer just so she could get all the love and attention at our house. So she came back, she escaped the strange land that was our neighborhood, and she came back with her rabbit friend. So I don't know, those two strangers just must have had a really fun week. But now Georgia Peach never goes outside unattended. We always monitor her, always watch her, and I will never lose her again, mark my words. So that is a story of how my pet turtle escaped and came back 8 days later.
That's fantastic, Hope. It sounds like Georgia Peach learned that the grass is not always greener, and in fact, it's better supplied at home with her rabbit friend. That's fantastic.
That is what I'm thinking too.
All right, thank you so much. Great stories so far. We're off to a fantastic start tonight with Strangers in a Strange Land. And speaking of strangers, oh, sorry, Dr. Wary, you're up. Dr. Wary, our very own Dr. Wary from the oncology group.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. Can you guys all hear me? Good? Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so I had to change my story at the last minute, but that's okay. I've got this covered. So I'm gonna tell a story about a stranger and also being amongst strangers. And a lot of you probably think I'm going to talk about being from Australia and living in America, but I'm not, in fact. I am going to talk about being a stranger as a kid in school. So I went to an all-girls school from the tender age of 6 until I finished school, and so that brings with it a whole array of matching baggage setting, which I'm still working through. And I went to a what they refer to themselves the most prestigious all-girls school in Australia. And the motto was that, and it was called Abbottsley, and the motto was that an Abbottsley girl can do anything. Now, there was obviously conditions that applied to that. We weren't allowed to eat in public. We had to have regulation hair ribbons, and there were school-issued underwear. But apart from all of those things, Abbottsley girls could do anything. As you may or may not realize, within an all-girls school, it's basically like the Spice Girls. So you have all different groups of girls. You have the cool kids, you have the rebel, naughty, sexually promiscuous kids. There's the Jesus loving crowd. There are the nerds and the smart kids. There are the boarders. And so those are the girls who come from the country and live at the school during the term. There were the immature dumb girls, and then there were the perfect rich girls. So everyone's got their little clique, and everyone's clique is very hard to infiltrate. I was without a clique. I actually did not have any friends in school, and usually spent lunch at the library by myself, not really reading because I didn't really like to read back then, or sitting with my younger sister, which is always a fun thing when you're trying to rise the social hierarchy and make it through school when you have lunch with your younger sister. So just to set the scene a little bit, there was a forest of bamboo at the very back of the school, and it was kind of underneath. I love that Lazar just wrote only in Sydney. Yes, only in Sydney. And there was a forest of bamboo out the back under the swimming pool that we had on school premise. And there was a rumor, and I'd heard it ever since I started school, that there was a club that would meet in the bamboo, and there was this area in the bamboo that was like carved out, and that's where all the like rebel cool kids went. And each year, this bamboo area was handed down to the next group of like rebel cool kids, and that's where they would like go to smoke during the day. And there were rumors that the boys from the local boys school would come over, and there'd be all sorts of mischief that was gotten up to in the bamboo. So it was sort of this like naughty kind of mysterious tale that there was this bamboo area that only the really rebellious naughty kids could go to, the ones that your parents never wanted hanging out with. Well, one day I got invited to join one of the girls who had never really spoken to me. I'd never really spoken to her. She was having a rough day, and I'd seen her crying, and I'd stopped by and was like, "Hey, you okay?" And she was like, "Not really. Do you want to come down to the Bamboo?" And I was like, "The Bamboo, it's real?" Like, I was like so stoked. And meanwhile, like, no one talked to me. I had no friends. So like having one of the cool rebellious kids talk to me and invite me to the Bamboo was like a huge thing. So I'm like, yeah, I want to go to the Bamboo. And of course it meant like missing class, which I later got in trouble for, but whatever. So we go down, and there's this like mysterious little path that's being carved out through the Bamboo that you wouldn't find unless you knew where it was. And then in the middle of the bamboo forest is a huge like cut out circle, and there's like chairs and tables, and there's cards, and there's cigarette butts, and there's beer, and there's like this whole new strange world inside this bamboo, in the middle of this extraordinarily prestigious, stuck up, snobby, pretentious school, where the girls who were considered the rebellious, really naughty girls that you never, ever, ever wanted to be friends, or you weren't allowed to be friends with, and you should never hang around. And that's where they hung out. And so after that day, I joined them quite a bit. We never interacted outside of the Bamboo because I obviously wasn't cool enough to be friends outside of the Bamboo. But in the Bamboo, we were friends, and I was a stranger to them and they were a stranger to me. And in a way, we sort of, I guess, got over that strangeness that we had, and we developed a friendship, and we saw strengths in each other. And the world, or the rest of my time at school, was a little bit easier. Now, not that I ever interacted with them or friends with, or did anything with them outside of the Bamboo, because I wasn't cool enough for that. But in the Bamboo, I was cool, man. So it was a brief reprieve. So that is my stranger in a strange land story, was the Bamboo from school. I will let you know that in my last year of school, when we had the Bamboo, because, you know, we were the kids that got the Bamboo, it was discovered that one of the girls had been sexually inappropriate with one of our gardeners at the school. The school made a point of not really ever hiring men, but for some reason there was this hot gardener, and he probably wasn't really hot. It was kind of like probably a boy who was like vet school hot, but so not really hot, because there's like actually no boys. So you can be like a 4 in the vet school scale and be a hot vet school boy. So it was probably similar, like you've got this huge girls' school, and so, you know, he probably wasn't that hot, but they'd got caught getting naughty in the Bamboo. And so the school's response to that was to rip all of the Bamboo out. And so we came to school on the Monday and all the Bamboo was gone, and they replaced the Bamboo with an agriculture club, which involved 2 steers that they put in a pen. And the best part of that was that I know it was one of the girls, one of my Bamboo friends, she let the steer out, and these 2 cows went on a rampage through the middle of Wahroonga, which is one of the richest suburbs in Australia where the school was, and absolutely trashed everyone's beautiful gardens in the street around the school. So it was kind of, in a way, a little bit of karma. So anyway, that's my stranger in a strange world or strange place story.
Oh, Dr. Wary, we can always count on you for the best stories. And I mean, first of all, you proved Abbottsley girls can do anything, because here you are.
Yeah.
An amazing oncologist, absolutely. So you just proved them true. And I've got all kinds of new words and phrases from you that include want to go to the Bamboo and vet school hot, whatever.
You know, that I think I mastered the most, as far as Abbotsy girls can do anything, is the freedom to wear whatever sort of underwear I want. So I really feel like that right there is a huge accomplishment for an Abbotsy girl.
Absolutely. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That was fantastic. All right. Our next storyteller Our first DVM student of the night is going to be Margaret Cook. All right, Margaret, hit it.
Hello, thanks, Dr. Cornell. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So I wanted to share a little bit about a pretty personal experience I went through, I guess, in my own mind, because I was alone while I went abroad for the first time. So Dr. Wary was original because she said, you think I'm gonna talk about Australia in America, but I'm not. Here I am, I'm gonna talk about America, not in America. So in my, I guess it was my second year of graduate school, I was fortunate enough to be accepted to present at a conference in Sweden. And the conference ended up falling in the second weekend of spring break. And so here I was with the university approval to fly across the United States, and they were going to pay for my plane ticket. So I said, might as well. I bought my passport. So I decided that I would go to London for the first 3 days of my trip before I began the conference. I don't know how many of you guys on this call have ever traveled completely alone. The department did not have any money to send me a friend with me. So I packed my bags and my mother gulped really big and prayed I wouldn't die. And I got on the plane. I was going to London, so I wasn't quite worried about a language barrier, but it is quite thrilling and terrifying, I feel, because I had never set outside of the United States before this point. And I spent 3 days alone with no one to talk to but British people, which was lovely. And I taught myself to use the subway, which I'd never done before because I've never even been to New York City. And I got lost a lot and had to rely on my wits. And I was pretty nervous most of the time because, you're a woman traveling alone in a city, but if you're smart about it, it's really, really empowering to go through that and kind of see what you're made of, because you can plan out a whole trip in a huge, strange city and figure out how their trains work. But the further along I went into those 3 days, just 3 days, the faster and faster I felt my own identity kind of shift. It's almost like your brain is trying to show you, you don't normally belong here. And so I had the strangest sensation of hearing my American accent, which any of you on the call might say, what does she even sound like? She doesn't have a drawl. She doesn't have the soothing tones of a Dr. Kenita Rogers or the swoon-worthy Australian accent of a Dr. Suva. She's just an American. But I can hear it. It was so strange. And my favorite part was on the third day of my trip. I stepped off of the tube and I minded the gap. And I bumped into a British citizen. And I heard myself, like, I didn't even think of it. I just went, sorry. And you can all laugh because, it is kind of ridiculous. But I literally stood in the subway station and I laughed because I didn't plan it. I wasn't mocking. My brain had shifted me into this, let's try to fit in better. We're not here to shine. We're here to melt into the pot. And I just thought I couldn't really decide how I felt about it. Was it that I wasn't strong in my identity as an American, or was it that I had been really willing to try to immerse myself in their country life? I didn't really know, but I found it a really kind of eye-opening experience. So then I got on a plane to Sweden, which, let me tell you sometime, not this story, it's a different story, about how the airport security in Stockholm works, because it's quite a hoot. And I got ready for this conference. So in Sweden, I knew that graduate students and professors from across the world were gathering because it was a pretty big educational technology conference. And I expected there to be more of a language barrier issue. And because my given name is Margaret, and Margaret was on my research, I decided that I would go ahead and just only introduce myself as Margaret. And you might say, well, that's what we call you, Margaret. What are you talking about? Well, up until that time, and before I was granted the great joy of going to vet school, I had always gone by Meg, or Megan, because my mother had given me the name Margaret, but it's such a heavy name for a kid that she wanted me to have an easier going nickname. So I just came out of this weird whirlwind experience in London where I had molded away from what sounded normal. And now I was saying, hello, my name's Margaret, and feeling like this fraud because I'm thinking, I don't normally answer to that, but it's true. It's on my birth certificate. So I made a lot of really great friends, and I had never stepped into a looking glass of so much cultural, language, diverse experience before. I made friends from across the world who I still speak to. There was Laia from España. There was Nadia from Barcelona. There was Sophie from Sweden itself. And I just would spend time with these really awesome people and just listen to the richness of their languages as they spoke to one another, or the accent to their English, and think, well, I am an American and I can really, really feel how different I am now. And I just felt really strange. So I'd like for you to just, think about what's your favorite, like, swoon-worthy accent. I know I already mentioned an Australian or a Southern. What about British, and think about how, if you wanted to, maybe not if people asked you to, you could probably call that forward and, produce that accent for me. Like if I said, please give me an Italian accent, you could say, arrivederci if you want to. I do because I'm an extrovert and it doesn't bother me. But anyway, I made good friends with the volunteers at the conference and the other graduate students. And on the last day of the conference, they gave us lunch. And we were going around talking to one another because it was the last day for us to be together. And they had given us this nice lunch so we could just sit down, kick back, and socialize. And we were going around individually talking about what country we were from and where and what we liked about it and what we liked about the other countries we'd been to. And it was my turn. And they said, where are you from in the United States? And I said, oh, I'm from Texas. I don't know how many of you guys know this. People get really excited when you tell them that you're from Texas. They go, I know where that one is. And they get super, super thrilled because I guess they feel like they can connect with you. But the next thing that they asked me really surprised me. They said, wait, I can hear you talking to me, but do you have a Texas accent? And I said, no, I really don't think so. And they said, but you're from there. And I said, yeah, I am. But I have such a blend of different parts of the United States where I was raised that I don't really have what you would call a Southern accent, which, reflecting on that now, I think that's what's so beautiful about the diversity of where everybody comes from in their own respective country. And they said, but could you do a Southern accent for us? Because we really want to hear it. And I literally couldn't. I'd been surrounded by Spanish accents, Swedish accents, Dane accent, Australian, British, Asian. I'd been so immersed in this melting pot of new culture and new languages that I could not bring it to my mouth. I can do it now, but it was just a mind-blowing experience for me. So I actually couldn't wait to get on the plane the next day to step into Texas soil and then realize what a stranger it had become to me after such an incredible experience. And that's my story, and I hope you enjoyed it.
That was awesome. Thanks, Margaret. Or should I say Meg?
If you so choose.
I love it when you have people who they're like a different person with different groups of people because they've chosen to go by a different part of their name. I think that's fantastic. And yes, I agree with Amy that language is really, really amazing. Okay, so our next storyteller is Irina Yankina from the Anesthesia Group, and she's got a good story to tell us tonight. Go ahead, Irina.
Hi. First of all, I would like to say thank you that you're having me as a speaker tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm a little bit nervous, so If I do some mistakes, I'm sorry. So I was going to tell you guys a short story about how I came here to the US. It might be a little bit different. Thank you, Emma. It might be a little bit different story, but I think it's might be a little bit interesting for you. So first of all, everything started from my husband, and I'm pretty sure you know my husband. It's Irina Yankina. He works as a ECC faculty at Texas A&M. So, and he was actually a pioneer who came first and made this road for us. And let us start from the beginning. I met Igor in 2011 in Moscow. I was born and raised in Moscow, and I graduated from my veterinary school. I got my DVM in Moscow as well. And that's where I met my husband, my future husband. And I remember really perfectly how when I met him first time, or like the second time in my life, he right away said me, you know what, I'm going to move to the US because I like this country. I love people there. I love level of the veterinary medicine and education there. And I just want to go there. I will confirm my license and etc. And I was kind of fine with that. I'm like, okay, if you wanted it, if it's your dream, I'm not going to stop you. Of course, do whatever you want. And he started all this board process, took his license. It took him about 4 years for getting his license. And he moved in 2015. He moved to Oregon for his internship. And he finished his internship and then moved to Florida for residency. And everything were fine. You know, we were kind of good friends. We had some relationship, and but I did not think about the marriage by those time. And then in a couple of years, when he was doing his first year of residency, I decided to visit him. And that was a hard decision because I was abroad several times. I traveled to Europe and everywhere around, not so far from Russia, let's say that. But I've never been to another continent, and that was kind of a big step to me. And actually, I had no idea what the US looks like. The only thing that I knew was from, you know, American movies and everything that I used to watch. And I did not know much. And then when I first time came here to visit Igor and I landed in New York. And before I made a decision that I probably need to take this opportunity and visit the big hospital, UPenn at the University of Pennsylvania. And I texted, before I made my trip, I texted to HR and asked if I can actually visit them as a visitor and everything. And they said, yeah, we need you to approve several things and fill up some documents, but that's fine, you can visit us. And I was interested, as Igor as well, I was interested in critical care by those time. I did anesthesia as well, but my main interest was the critical care. And I got the approval from UPenn, and I landed to New York, and moved to the UPenn. And then I met Deborah Silverstein, who is actually one of the big mom of critical care, as you know. And I used to read her book about critical care as well. Even in Russia, we have those books and we're able to read them. And she was so good and kind to me. Even I was a complete stranger. She first time saw me, but I was just admired with her, you know, level of inspiration that she gave me, and about how, you know, we made our conversation and everything. I was so impressed by those time. And then I moved to Igor and I said, you know what? I probably see why you want to live here, why you want to do all your educational and teaching things in here. And I agree, this is just the perfect country. I don't know much about people, about just, you know, regular people, but I feel if you have such a great specialist here, that's just fantastic. And actually, in the year after that, when Igor did his second year of residency, I made this hard decision to move. And if you ask me why that was hard, I can say that was just hard because I was not sure in my ability to live as a stranger and, you know, to accommodate myself to this country, to these people, to this culture, because everything looks a little bit different to me, and I need to use to that. I need to learn new things. I need to learn new language, and I want to do my best. I want to belong to this country. And that was a little bit of struggling to me, because I also had to leave my family and my friends in Russia and came to the foreign country where I don't have anything beside my husband, who, of course, I really appreciate him. He supported me every step that I did, and he supports me right now. And I just appreciate I'm having such a great husband. And in 2018, I made this decision to move. Finally, I packaged my my little, you know, suitcase. I grabbed my cat. My cat came with me from Russia. You probably were able to see her. She was sitting on my laps, and she's always somewhere around. My cat actually supports me as well. It might sound a little bit ridiculous, but she does. This is like a little creature who always around me, whatever happens. So, and in 2018, I came here. I came to Florida, and we could make this flight 9 to Gainesville, Florida, where Igor had been living by those time. And that's how I started my new life in here. So when Igor decided to was about to finish his residency, we decided where we're going to move, because that was also a big decision, where to start the new life, you know, for us as a specialists. And he chose University of Texas, and we did not know anything about Texas by those time. But we made this decision that we're going to move here because we like here. We like Texas. And we, you know, used to read those articles that Texas is kind of a little bit like country inside the country. And that's actually true. We all already can see this a little bit of difference. And we moved here a year and a half ago, and I was really happy to join our anesthesia team as a tech. I'm working on my license. It's going to take some time. It's going to take several years, but I'm making this little steps towards it. And I would say that the idea behind my story, that even if sometimes some things looks impossible to you and you feel that you would never can make it, and this is something impossible, but you really want it, just keep making these small steps and you will reach your goals, and you of course will achieve everything that you would like to have. I know that right now, because if you asked me 3 years ago, I was completely confused by all this situation. But now we have perfect team. We have our perfect friends who surrounds and supports us every time at any situation, and we're just happy to be here. This is kind of our little story.
Awesome. Irina, thank you so much for sharing your story and the big step that you take to come to the US. The ones you have in front of you now to get your license, no big deal. That's nothing in comparison.
Yeah, that was the biggest one, I would say.
Yes,
Just
absolutely.
make
Very
this decision.
inspirational to all of us. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you. Okay, our next storyteller is going to be one of our very own 4VM students, Miss Savannah Wilkinson, soon to be Dr. Savannah Wilkinson. All right, Savannah, you're up.
Thank you, Dr. Cornell. Oh wait, can you hear me just before?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Cool. Thank you. So this is the story of a ginger in a strange land. That strange land is Russia. And this was my first international trip. Yes, Irina. I already told you about this. So yes, anyway, it was my first international trip. The story takes place in March of 2012. I was a junior in high school. And in March of that year, my school had a break, and I chose for part of my break to attend an international Model United Nations conference. My school participated in Model UN, and it was my school's first international Model UN trip too. And this trip was a total of 10 days. And what happens at these Model UN conferences at the high school level is they run each committee similarly to the way they would run the way that they run the Model UN today. And each school represents a country, and my school represented Egypt for this conference. And the conference took place in St. Petersburg, but we first went to Moscow. Anyway, so the beginning of my story takes place of just getting there. We flew from Houston, had a layover in Paris. Then we went on to Moscow, where we were for 4 days. Then went on to St. Petersburg. We arrived around like 9ish p.m. in Moscow, and we stayed at the Westin, which was really nice. Like, it felt like we were just in the US with that. I mean, the hotel was really, really nice. But fun fact, our tour guide, Olga, she told us the next day that the building across the street from us, from the Westin, was a brothel. And we did not know that. I did not know that. The architecture was beautiful. Like, I thought it was a bank personally, but then she was like, no, it's not a bank. So yeah, fun fact. Anyway, so our first night there, we had a pretty much westernized dinner, and it was chicken. It was like baked chicken, but didn't really have like seasoning or anything like that. And then they said it was something potatoes. Like, it looked like mashed potatoes, but it didn't taste like potatoes. I don't know. I remember the food very vividly from that trip. I don't know why, but anyway, I was thankful for anything that night because I was hungry. Then for the next few days, we spent our time riding around in a van throughout Moscow with our tour guide, Olga. She was a native Russian from Moscow. To give you a mental picture, she was about like 5'6", female in her mid-40s, and she had blue eyes, pale skin, raven black hair with blunt bangs. And whenever we were there, it was snow and ice everywhere. So she was bundled up in like this black fur coat that was down to her knees. And anyway, so she was great. She was quite sarcastic, but she did a wonderful job. And throughout those 4 days with her, we rode around to places like the Museum of Cosmonautics, which was kind of similar to our NASA, essentially. And I say that I include that in my strange land story because we saw things that we would normally see at NASA here, but it was just in Russia. So it was just odd to like see their take on things and how they present things compared to us here, just to compare the two. We also went to cemeteries. We went to St. Basil's Cathedral. We saw the Kremlin like while we were in Red Square, and shopping at an international shopping mall and market, taking the subway a couple times, and above all, experiencing the delectable Russian food. So that was the overall highlights of Moscow before going to St. Petersburg. And to go into a little bit more detail from some of those events were for the cemeteries, what's interesting there is that there's a lot of red brick just surrounding that cemetery, or cemeteries, but we went to like 2 and they were huge. And you know that you would reach someone's headstone or like place of rest if they were of significance or leadership, or if they were they had a prominent role in society, because they had a bust. It was like a huge bust. And it was very detailed. And anyway, I had never seen that before in a cemetery in the US. Then with shopping there, Olga told us to bargain. So whenever Olga told us to do something, we did what she told us to do. And I bargained for the first time when shopping. I did not do very well at it. The guys in the group helped me. There were 4 guys and there were 6 girls, and they were like, "Savannah, you got this." And I was trying to like get this really cool like Russian doll. Like, it was very, very pretty, and it was so expensive. And I was like, I really want it. And they're like, "You got this. You can bargain." And like, I did not have it, and so they stepped in and helped me. And then that was my shopping experience with bargaining. St. Basil's was beautiful, like jaw-dropping beautiful. It's in Red Square. In Red Square, you have a famous like shopping store. It's GUM, like GUM, I think is the abbreviation. Then you have St. Basil's. Then you can see the Kremlin as well. And after we saw St. Basil's, we were crossing. We were trying to go to this other bridge. I'm sure y'all have heard about the bridge in Paris, where there's locks where they put it along the side of the fencing. And they have a smaller one there in Moscow. I don't think it's not like publicly advertised, but just people were doing that there. And they had trees too, like metal trees that they could put the locks on. Anyway, so on our way over there, we saw KGB members, and they were like standing and talking and kind of looking at us. So we just like went on our merry way. We just kept our heads down. And then also we were just walking amongst the people to get to our lunch spot a couple times. And Olga was telling us to try to like not laugh a lot in public or smile a whole lot, because apparently there it looks like you're immature or unprofessional if you like show emotion openly in public like that. Pretty much all, if you show like laughter, you're smiling a lot, that's more of a youthful, like young child kind of thing, or maybe like teenager. So a lot of the adults, like there was no expression on their face. So I thought that was very interesting, because there's all this beautiful like architecture, and the snow is beautiful. Like you're surrounded by beauty, and yet everyone like acted so cold, like they didn't really show any joy. So it was just an interesting contrast there. Then the subway. What's interesting with the subway is, I mean, besides all the pickpocketing, was once you come down into the tunnel, the subways themselves are like a normal subway, but it's where you wait for the subway, where they have these archways, and along the wall, it looks like stained glass you would see here in a church. And the artistry of it all was really cool. I mean, the height of each one was maybe like 12 feet. It was beautiful. I took one picture, and it's like a cascade of flowers up the wall, and it's all in stained glass. So I thought that was really cool. And then the delectable Russian food that I was talking about, and this, I was mind blown by how long lunch took. We were at lunch for like 4.5 hours at this nice Russian restaurant, and we had like 5 courses, and like one was a salad, one was this dome-shaped chicken thing that had butter. It was like chicken, and then yes, it was like chicken, and then it had this melted butter on it. It tasted really good. I love chicken, so that was great. And then I tried borscht for the first time. It looked like blood to me at first, but it actually tasted pretty good. And so yes, borscht was good. And one of the girls, though, she was vegan, and Olga got kind of mad at her because she only ate salad. Like she did not even touch the other food, and so like it was disrespectful for her to not even try it, even though like that's not what she was used to eating. So I did not realize like how disrespectful that was to like not even take a bite kind of thing, even though that's not what you normally eat. And then after that pretty much summarizes our Moscow trip. Then we took a train to St. Petersburg. That was my first train ride, by the way. Then took a train to St. Petersburg. We got to the hotel around like 10:30 at night. The hotel was hot. It was like 85 something degrees. I don't know. We were sweating. And it's still snow and ice there in St. Petersburg. And we get to the hotel, find our rooms, and just down the hall, lo and behold, there's a school from Boston, Massachusetts there. And we actually ended up sharing the tour guide bus with them to the Malta United Nations conference. So that was nice. Anyway, then after that, we were supposed to go to bed. We found out around 2 a.m. that two of the girls from our party snuck out with two boys that they had met from the train station who happened to also be at our hotel. And our chaperones were livid. That might be an understatement, but it was bad. And so they had snuck out. Fortunately, they had not gotten very far. They made it to a convenience store across the street. And I don't know how, because we also had another we had two female chaperones and one male chaperone. The male chaperone got them. So someone must have snitched on them. I don't know. We did, like, the girls, there were 3 junior girls. They were sophomores. So we had no idea what they were doing. And we were busy talking with the Boston people. And so that was our first night in St. Petersburg. The rest of our time in St. Petersburg consisted of the conference itself. The Malta United Nations conference was 4 or 5 days long. And that was a really cool experience because I got to meet other students that were my age, but just from different countries like Dubai. I had a bunch of Dubai people on my committee. India, Sweden, Norway, Italy. Yeah, there were like the Boston people. So you get the picture. Anyway, then the other thing that I found interesting while in St. Petersburg too, and it was also in Moscow, is that I'm a redhead, like I'm a natural redhead, and there are not a lot of redheads in Russia. And Olga was like, "Oh, you have blue eyes and red hair. That's interesting." Like she thought I dyed my hair, but I didn't. And so she was, apparently that's not a common thing there. It's more of like you may see blonde hair and blue eyes there, but not red hair and blue eyes. Side note. And in St. Petersburg, we had the Malta United Nations conference. We visited the Winter Palace, which used to be occupied by the Romanovs. And I'll tell you about my food experience there. It's a very important experience. And then what we did in our free time on the nights off from while we were there for the conference. So one of the 3 nights while the conference was going on was we went to a ballet. It was a contemporary ballet. And I thought, oh, it's so cool. Like you hear about like the Russian ballet, like must be awesome. And we did not know it was going to be a contemporary ballet. I do not remember what it was about. I just remember at one point there were these people walking around with paper mache heads of animals, like on a stick, and they were all gray. And then there were people on a skateboard going up and down, and then there was a couple other people pirouetting. I don't know what message they were trying to convey, but we were all very confused for a while. It might have just been the contemporary dance thing for me. Maybe classical is more my style. I don't know, but I was very lost. But it was nice just to like be there and experience it. Then, so that was the ballet experience. Then the second night that we went to a nightclub. I had never been to a nightclub in high school. And yeah, that was, so the Boston people and our group, so the Texans, we're the only Americans in that club. And our chaperones are there and everything. And so it was fun. But I bring the story up because of like, we're in a strange land, meaning like one of the girls in my group, she's one of my friends. She was trying to get a guy's attention, and she went up on stage, and they had this bubble machine. And so she started dancing on stage, and because of the bubble machine, I guess the stage was wet. She slips, like eats it, and lands on her booty. And she's wearing this hot pink skirt, and she has this like track of like this black straight line down her skirt. And for the rest of the night, everyone was looking at us like we were weird. So, because she wiped out on stage. Yeah. And then, so that was our second night off that happened. And then the next day we went to the Winter Palace, and seeing the Winter Palace in one day is equivalent to trying to see the Smithsonian in DC here in one day. Like, it's not possible. There's so much to see. Everything there was beautiful. Then I say the best for last. My food experience was, we were trying to look for food the next day since we did not have food the first night we came into St. Petersburg. The next day we were walking around trying to find a place that we wanted to eat at, and we saw the Golden Arches, i.e. McDonald's. We ran to McDonald's. I never thought I'd be so happy to see the Golden Arches in my entire life until that moment. And yes, once I got there, I think I might have teared up. I don't know, but the guys definitely did. Like, these football guys are tearing up because they're like food we know. And so we come in, nothing's in English, of course, and this is like pre-iPhone, and they had these laminated menus with pictures, fortunately. And so lots of pointing was happening, and we found these girls that were about our age and they could speak English. So they translated my order and stuff. I got 2 double cheeseburgers, fries, large drink. And then all the guys got like 2 Big Macs. Like, we all ate. I've never eaten so much McDonald's in my entire life, but it was totally worth it. It was so good. And then and overall, though, the demeanor of people in St. Petersburg was about the same as Moscow, too. So I think just overall from that trip, what I found interesting was just the architecture. There was so much gold everywhere, and like the cathedrals or any place that's like been there for hundreds of years. And like, you have this beautiful architecture, but the people seem kind of cold a little bit at the same time. But they also were kind of friendly too, just depending on your interaction. But overall, I was a ginger in a strange land, but it was a great experience.
Thanks, Savannah. So what I'm learning about Savannah is that she's about architecture and food when she travels, right? So now we know what she's looking for a good time. And I thought you were going to tell us that you were the person on stage in the nightclub, Savannah. I was waiting for it. I thought for sure.
No, I was still an introvert back then.
Okay, fantastic. Awesome. All right, our next storyteller, we're going back to our fantastic technical staff, and Jackie Christensen is going to tell us her story. Jackie, take it away. Jackie. She was here. Where'd she go?
See her right there. It looks like her audio is not working.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. Let's see. Yeah, Jackie, we can't hear you, so we're having some mic problems.
I think it looked like she's going to log off and log back in.
Okay, fantastic. We'll give her just a second. Awesome. First of all, let me thank all of you for coming and be thinking about what we should have as a theme for our next storytelling event. Might be the fall before we do another one, who knows, but we will we'll definitely do another one. Oh, I see you're coming back.
Okay, now
you're good, Jackie. Good to go.
I would be the one person to mess Zoom up after using it for a year.
No.
Okay, so yeah, so after hearing everybody else's stories, I'm actually I was trying to come up with a new one because I feel like mine is probably I don't know, maybe a little depressing. So you can get popcorn now, wine, whatever you want, but I'll just breeze through this real fast. And so my story, I guess, when I thought about strangers in a strange land, I thought about kind of the overwhelming theme of being change. And so I think change is, there's a lot of different types of change, but I think the most difficult type of change is forced change, change that you didn't expect, change that you didn't plan for, you didn't want maybe. And so my story is about forced change and kind of what that impact was on me and my life. And so I was born in Fort Worth, Texas. And I lived with my brother and my parents. My brother's a couple years older than me, and didn't really have kind of the typical childhood, if anybody really did. But we kind of lived in a poorish neighborhood that was almost like a forgotten section of Fort Worth. So it was, you know, a lot of kind of rough stuff, drugs, crime, you know, all the above. But the beautiful thing about being kids is you're blinded to it. You don't really notice it. It's normal. And so we, you know, grew up, went about our lives. And when I was 10, my mom unexpectedly passed away. And, you know, it was just kind of one of those moments where, you know, Dad was like, all right, we've got to make some changes. He worked really hard and did some great things, but we just kind of kept trucking along, and we felt very stuck as a family where we were. And so went into high school, freshman in high school, and it was a very large public school, thousands of kids in kind of a rough area of Fort Worth. And the actual advice from my high school counselor was to just keep your head down, study, do your homework, you'll be okay. And that's kind of what I did for a while, head down, and tried my best to just make it through. And that worked well for a little while, but unfortunately, unexpectedly, my dad passed away my freshman year of high school. And so my brother and I's world just kind of flipped upside down. And here comes this forced change that us teenagers didn't expect, didn't plan for, didn't want. And we had these adults we didn't know very well asking us to make decisions about where we're going to go. My brother, being a little bit older than me, he was able to live with a friend. He was close to, you know, adulthood, I guess. So he went to live with his best friend and his best friend's parents, and I elected to move to Washington State to live with a second cousin. And that I had never left Texas. I had never been on a plane. I thought that was for rich people. I didn't know any better. And so my first flight on a plane as a teenager, it was mesmerizing seeing clouds from that perspective. And then landing in Seattle, there were mountains and water and trees and all these things that we don't see here in Texas very often anyway. And so, you know, as we're driving to her house, it's a beautiful drive with these tall trees, as tall as buildings, never seen that before. Get to her house, and she has this beautiful house overlooking a tree line. And on a really clear day, you can see Mount Rainier. And it was just like I was living in a postcard. And so that alone was just this huge culture shock physically. And then I guess the other part of it is that then I had to start high school again. I was still in my freshman year. And so I went into this school kind of with the same mindset that I had going to that first high school in Fort Worth. And but it was totally different. This was a smaller town. My class had a little over 100 kids. And I was greeted with such excitement, just I think because they probably don't get new people very often. They were all raised together. So, I mean, everybody wanted to know my name, where I was from, what was Texas like, all the typical Texas jokes apply in this situation. And it was just a completely different experience. And I made friends very quickly. I started playing sports, which I had never done before, and found out I was good at some of them. I tried out for cheerleading and found out I wasn't good at that at all, and got to do a couple of plays, and got a car, got my first job at a vet clinic. My senior year of high school, I was voted to be on homecoming court, and I got to wear the dress and the sash and the crown. And it's like something, you know, every 17, 18-year-old girl would want. Maybe not all of them, but anyway, it was just this kind of crazy turn of events, and something I had never even pictured in my wildest dreams. And I got to go on all these road trips and do all these things that just wouldn't have been reality for me, most likely. And then something about being a Texan, I think when you're born in Texas, a piece of Texas stays with you. And so I always wanted to come back. And so as hard as it was, when I graduated high school, I left that town, left those friends I had made, and came back to Texas, went to school, got a job at A&M, and I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do when I was a little girl in that dark neighborhood. You know, I've been here at A&M for a little over a decade and absolutely love it. And so it, you know, with the invention of Facebook and MySpace and all those things, I don't have MySpace anymore. I don't know if anybody does, but I ended up kind of reconnecting with some of those people from the dark ages, so to speak, those kids I used to hang out with that are now adults. And it was crazy to see that many of them are still kind of trapped there, and they're still there, some in that same neighborhood and in the same kind of cycle, facing their own demons. And I ended up realizing that, as terrible and tragic and everything as it was, really the loss of my parents was probably the most important gift they could have ever given us. And they gave us an out. And I think we're the reason that my brother and I are as successful and happy as we are today. And so I think how that's impacted me as an adult is I embrace change a lot easier. Something that, you know, I guess I would have thought I would have been a control freak. I would want to control things since I didn't have a ton of control early on, but I really enjoy change. I like change. Even forced change I see as an opportunity. And so it's something I think somehow made a really positive impact on my life. And so, yeah, that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing such a genuine story, Jackie. That was a fantastic story, and it just speaks to everything that I have ever heard about you and who you are in oncology. So it just goes with all of that. So thank you again for sharing that. That's amazing. All right, we are gonna turn it over, this scares me, to Dr. Larry Suva to take us home for the evening. He's gonna wrap us up with a fantastic story and with his, what was it that I heard earlier, swoon-worthy Australian accent. So here we go.
Yes,
Dr.
sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry, man. I'm going to use that. Dr. Cornell's going to get sick of it.
Yeah,
Jackie,
I was apologizing to Dr. Cornell, not you, Dr. Suva.
You totally fed the beast there, Margaret.
Yeah, really. Jackie, I just want to say thank you really so much for sharing. Your story is actually not that dissimilar to mine, although mine was not necessarily forced by the same circumstances, but the idea of stranger in a strange land, not to steal any thunder from Emma from about growing up in Australia. My version of growing up in Australia is a lot different than Emma. She went to this fancy school in Sydney, which is a big city, and I grew up in the poor part of Melbourne. I went to a school not so inspirational, but that's a whole different story. I want to tell the story of growing up in Australia as a young person, not recognizing the privilege that I was experiencing, and coming across the course of my life. I moved to the United States when I was 30 and I'm 63 now, so I've been here a long time. And growing up in Australia, I was a surf lifesaver and a football player. No, not American football or soccer, Aussie rules, the greatest game on turf. I played a lot of cricket. Another game that's a fantastic Australian sport. I played cricket in England as well. I had a very wonderful upbringing as an Australian male. To quote from Men at Work, you know, I come from a land down under where women glow and men chunder. And so as a male in Australia, I experienced all sorts of privilege, being able to do what I want, when I wanted, how I wanted. And it was just, at the time, it seemed like the ideal lifestyle. So I had completed my PhD in 1988 or something like that. And at the going away party for my lab that I'd been working in as a technician for 10 years before I became a graduate student. So I got my PhD when I was 31. And so my going away present from my laboratory workmates was a giant full body blue condom. The idea was at the time to protect America from my influence. Here I was, not Crocodile Dundee, but not far short of it. I didn't have a knife, but I had a pretty big Australian accent and a pretty strong attitude. And here I was going to America. And so everybody at home wanted to protect America from me. So my pregnant first wife and I packed up our swag, which was, 3 moving boxes full of stuff. Unlike, just like Dr. Vamulapalli, we were not the wealthiest graduate students. And so we packed up everything. I should say that, as an Australian male, I don't recall ever consulting very much with my ex-wife about the fact that we should pack up and move to America for 4 years so that I could do my postdoc. She was pregnant. We packed up our stuff and left. We arrived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to work at Merck, and were immediately ensconced in a Merck-sponsored apartment with a vehicle and able to get around. My ex-wife Julia we were there for about 6 weeks. She gave birth to our first daughter, and after that time, I then started really to pay a bit more attention about what was happening in the lab at Merck. And the very first thing I noticed as an Australian being at Merck was, one, there wasn't a lot of long hair and beards, and 2, there wasn't a lot of people that looked just like me. Merck at Westport, Pennsylvania is a large, very large site. At that time had about 10 or 12,000 people employed at it. And none of them there wasn't another Australian that I was aware of there, and none of them seemed to look like me. And all of my colleagues were from 15 or 16 different countries, a thing I had not really experienced in Australia. I grew up, as I said, in Melbourne, and at that time had a population of about 2.5 million people. And there were few non-white immigrants in the country that I had ever seen. So coming to America, certainly as a postdoc, it seemed that it really was the first of a series of eye-openers for me, and it's those I want to follow a little bit through this story. And so after several years at Merck, Julia and I and our first daughter, Megan, we call her Meg as well, we moved to Boston. I took a job at a university up there that, just like Texas A&M University has maroon as its color. They don't tend to have as many students, and they're a little bit more uppity about their attitude. But that Crimson School in Boston was convinced that they should employ me. And so again, I don't recall ever asking very much of my ex-wife that we should move. I just said, oh, I got this job, let's go. So again, we picked up our stuff. This time we had 2 cars and maybe 6 boxes of stuff, and we moved it to Boston. And while I'm at Boston, my boss and longtime mentor now gives me a bit of advice about living in Boston, which is to dress British and think Yiddish. I'm not sure I think Yiddish, but that's when I started wearing bow ties, because I thought that would help you dress British. But Boston was a very interesting place for me. There were lots of Australians there, obviously, but I was commuting to work on a bicycle and spent a lot of time with, again, a vast array of people that had a different set of experiences to me. During my time in Boston, I started to realize that, there may have been some things about growing up in Australia as a single-minded white guy that weren't as good as people might have thought, or perhaps even that I had thought. They were sort of thoughts in the back of my mind, and I really tried not to pay too much attention to them. And I kept playing tennis and doing all those things that Australians do when they're in a foreign country, and sending letters back home. My mum was sending me jars of Vegemite and all that sort of stuff because you couldn't buy it. But I managed to survive in Boston. Probably for some of the reasons that I mentioned about just deciding that we should do things and not ever really paying much attention to my first wife. We divorced up there, and I moved back to Philadelphia to start work at another pharmaceutical company, an even bigger one than the one I was at Merck, which was GlaxoSmithKline. At that time, the largest pharmaceutical company in the world. I spent a lot of time going between Philadelphia, North Carolina, and England, traveling and working in an environment that was incredibly diverse, incredibly multicultural. And it was while I was at SmithKline, I started to really get a focus on what I had learned in Australia and what I needed to unlearn. after several years at GlaxoSmithKline, I moved back to academia. And this time I went to the South, University of Arkansas for medical sciences in Little Rock, Arkansas, prior to coming to Texas A&M. But moving to the South was what a massive opportunity for me. This was really the first time I got to live my life with people of different colors. My daughter, who had been born in Philadelphia, had moved with me to Arkansas. She went to university in Arkansas and graduated from there. Met a wonderful man, they had a gorgeous baby daughter, my granddaughter Olive, and Brian and Meg and Olive are just, the joys of our life. So happened that Brian happened to be an African-American man, and that incorporation and blending in our family had also had a lot of change associated with it for us here. But for my parents in Australia, both my mother and father, who were both products of a racist Australia that unfortunately still exists a little bit, took them a little bit longer to get used to the fact that their son-in-law was an American. That was hard enough, let alone an African-American. Anyway, so then I moved to Texas A&M, and what an opportunity that's been. Since I've been here now 5 years, I have found another wife, thank God, thank goodness, and a wife who I've learned that don't just do stuff without asking, talk to people. And while here, under the influence of Dr. Rogers and even Dr. Cornell, who I hate to admit it, I've done a lot of soul searching, a lot of educational things, a lot of professional development. I did ally training, and I'm honored to be an ally. I have done step in, stand up. I've done leadership training with the AVMC and with Penn. And I've learned that there's a whole bunch of diversity that makes this country incredible. There's a lot of bullshit associated with it, and you've got to get past it, but there's an incredible amount of diversity that makes this country special. And so now, as I think about getting through the pandemic and having to then think about going back to Australia to visit my aging father and my sisters and all the family members there, I've found myself preparing for this. And when Karen had sent the email out initially about it, I went rummaging around and found that full body bright blue condom. And I'm thinking I might need it to wear it back in Australia, not to protect them from me, but to protect me from some of the things that had affected me adversely for such a huge portion of my life. So the blue condom really is the tagline for this. And I don't know whether a swoon-worthy accent is compensated for by a full-body blue condom, but I'm looking forward to going back home, and I am to Australia, and I'm definitely going to take that condom with me.
Thanks, Dr. Suva. And I just have to ask, could you wear that to EC next week? Because I think that would be a vast addition to the meeting. I think that would be
my pleasure, Dr. Cornell.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, Olivia says you should have worn it tonight, right? I totally agree.
No, you said, I was told there were no props.
Okay, all right, fair enough, fair enough. All right, thank you so much for bringing us home with such a great story, with such a great message. I really want to think about traveling safe has a whole new meaning. Very nice, Dr. Vemalapalli. First of all, applauding to all of the storytellers tonight, a diverse and vast group, and took us to all the different places, both literally and figuratively. I really enjoyed that. I hope that you guys all enjoyed it. We had almost 130 people, over 130 people here at one time tonight. Thank you all for joining us. We'll have another one of these at some point in the near future. But again, hats off to the storytellers. It's so courageous to get up and do this in front of everybody. And so we really appreciate you tonight. And we appreciate all of those of you who tuned in. So until next time, good night, everybody.